Thank you guys so much for joining me for this live workshop. I've been preparing it for a while. I've been thinking about it for months, and I'm just so happy that we're finally able to talk about the American accent. So first things first, I just want to remind you guys, I'm an accent coach, and that means that I have really focused on how to teach pronunciation to non-native English speakers. I'm a trained English teacher. I have almost a decade of experience. I've worked with people from almost everywhere in the world, and most of my English teaching has been based in the US. So I've really focused on helping non-native speakers who are living in the US and really need to improve their ability in order to sound more natural, in order to have better life opportunities. That said, I have also worked with international students and people who are coming for a language exchange for a short period of time. So I've seen people who need English for different purposes, and we'll talk about that in just a moment. So I want to kind of talk a little bit about what you need to know about the accent first, and then we will go into the questions. So there will be plenty of time for questions at the end. I just have a short presentation because that's how I roll. Okay, so I found this quote yesterday, and it is so great because it is so true for so many non-native speakers. And this is a quote from Salma Hayek, who is a Mexican actress who now lives in the United States and works in Hollywood. She's very famous, award-winning actress. And this is what she said in an interview for O Magazine, which is Oprah's magazine. She said, "I came here to the US and I realized how truly limited my English was, and it was very scary. I soon realized that it wasn't going to be hard to learn. It was going to be nearly impossible. My accent was horrible. In Mexico, nobody says you speak English with a good accent. You either speak English or you don't. As long as you can communicate, no one cares. But the word accent became such a big word in my life." And I think that this quote is just so important for you guys to understand, because it's funny, I don't actually think that it was nearly impossible for her to learn English, but a lot of times when people talk about not being able to speak English, they're actually talking about their accent, because they actually do speak English. I'm sure she spoke English fine when she was living in Mexico, but nobody ever taught her how to sound like an American when speaking English. And this has been my experience living in South America, is that was like, it never even occurred to me when I moved to Argentina back in 2001 that I had to start making sounds using my mouth in different ways than I naturally did as a native speaker of English. So this is just such a big problem for people, is that a lot of times when you're learning English, you are thinking about how to speak correctly, how to use good grammar, vocabulary, and you don't spend a lot of time on your accent. Even when I've taught using English curricula by other people, they don't really focus on accent. Accent is totally an afterthought. So if Salma Hayek, a very well-known actress who is famous for just owning her accent in English and speaking confidently, had that same reaction when she first came to the US, you don't have to feel bad if you have an accent. It's just part of it. We don't learn how to not have an accent. Some people are better at it than others. I just want you to understand that you don't learn, if you're learning English abroad, you don't learn how to speak English with a good accent, or you learn with the British accent instead of the American accent. Lots of people have stories of learning one or the other, but it's a common problem. And, you know, I found quotes from Shakira. I found quotes from, I forget the name of the actress right now, but the one on Modern Family, Sofia Vergara. Like, all of these actresses have a strong, or actresses or musicians, they have strong accents because you don't learn accent reduction when you are learning English. It's so you can speak English fluently, and then you've got all of these habits that are in your mouth that you need some work to uncover. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So I hope that makes you guys feel better. Why do you need to speak English more clearly? So I want you to think about why you need to speak English more clearly, because the process of reducing your accent will be different depending on your needs. Obviously, I just gave a bunch of examples of famous people who have accents, and that actually helps them work in the United States. And we'll talk about the reaction to accents during the Ask Me Anything portion. But I really want you to consider this question. Here's why. when you start working on reducing your accent, you want to focus on the aspect of your accent that is most likely to get you results for your own goals. And you have heard me say it in many interviews with other English experts, and I say it all the time in my mindset videos. It's about your needs, your goals, your desires that are what you need to focus on. So your needs are going to be different depending on the reasons you need to speak English with a better accent. So you have to think about, where do you use English? How does English affect your career opportunities? Do you live your life in English? And this is really, really, really going to make a difference on how people react to you when you have an accent. So please go ahead and comment on these questions. I'm asking you these reflection questions because these are what are going to help you know what to focus on with your accent. So something I want to say to you guys is that I've started really thinking about this in terms of my YouTube channel, in my resources, in my content. So there are a lot of different needs that different non-native speakers have. And a lot of people are interacting in these online platforms like YouTube or on Facebook or whatever, and they have different needs. And I can already see that from the questions that have come in. So if you're interacting in English mainly at your work, like you have English-speaking colleagues, but they're living in your country, your needs are going to be to communicate more clearly. It's going to be able to speak so that you're understood, to just get your point across. And you can use your accent in order to improve that. If you're going to be moving to an English-speaking country or you're living in an English-speaking country, your focus is going to be different because you're still going to want to focus on communicating clearly in your meaning, but you have to think about how people are perceiving you when you're living in their country. Now, I often say that if you like, having an accent's not a problem. I reduce accents. I don't eliminate accents. I try to eliminate accents for my clients, but it's really about reducing it to the point that it's not a distraction. So if you're living in an English-speaking country, you want to communicate clearly and you don't want your accent to be a distraction. Like I've said in other videos, and I'll say again and again, if somebody's mean to you about your accent, they're not a nice person. And you're not going to have a huge problem with a nice person who's going to not like you because of your accent. So I'm not going to use bad words here on this video, but I just want you to understand that if people are judging you based on your accent, that says more about them than it says about you. However, having a better accent, having a more American accent, especially if you're living in the US or you're having a more Canadian accent, a North American accent, that's really going to help you feel like you fit into the culture, feel like you belong, feel like less of a foreigner on the outside. Most of my clients have been focusing on wanting to not be perceived as being different while they're working in the United States or they're studying or they're teaching at universities in the United States. So you really want to think about that. How can you focus on your feeling better so that you feel like you fit in, you feel like you belong? Now, this is just something that I want you guys to understand, that a lot of my resources are focused on people living in the US. And I notice from the emails and the comments I get, people are kind of split. I've got like 50% of the people living in the US or Canada or other English-speaking countries, and like 50% of the people who are living abroad. But your needs are going to be different. Everyone benefits from speaking more clearly, but your needs are going to be different. So most people who work on accent reduction, they're trying to minimize or hide their accent, reduce it so that it's not a distraction. And some of the questions that people have been asking are, how do people perceive my accent? And that is totally going to depend on your region. I'll actually start, but he asked the question, how come people don't seem to care about an accent in LA? Are there other places where people don't care about an accent? Well, yeah, New York. You walk down the street in New York and you may not even hear English. You go to Miami, you may not even hear English. In the United States, we don't have a national language. English is like the language of government, but we don't have a national language. So if you're in a metropolitan area, a city where there's a lot of immigrants, people aren't going to be as surprised by your accent. If you're in a place that's a little more rural or a little more dominated by native English speakers only, you're going to notice that people might kind of be like, oh, you have an accent. And it's kind of a surprise because it's not a daily occurrence. So the United States is like that. And that's why I think it's important to understand in city areas and urban areas, you're not going to get as much of a reaction for having an accent. And that's why it really depends on what your needs are and the people you're interacting with. You may work with a lot of open-minded people. When I've worked in nonprofits helping refugees, almost everybody in the office spoke another language, and not a lot of them were only English speakers. Most of them had been living in the US for 5, 10, 15, 20, 25 years. So accents were just kind of part of it. Nobody really cared. But you may work with people who aren't usually used to hearing accents. So you really just have to decide how you feel. So reducing your accent is really about improving how you feel, right, if you're living in an English-speaking country. So I really just want you to think about if speaking English more clearly will help you with your career and how that's going to affect the way you approach learning accent reduction. And there's some great questions coming in. Okay, so here we go to the question that I really want you guys to consider. So I get a lot of emails and comments where people say, I need to improve my pronunciation. I need to improve my speaking. I need to improve my accent. But when you say that you want to improve your pronunciation, what do you mean by this? What exactly do you mean by this? And this is really going to vary, but depending on the focus that you're going to need for reducing your accent, for accent reduction and improving your accent, improving how you speak, because it's going to be different. You have to know what it is you mean by that. So why do you want to improve? So many non-native speakers share that they want to improve their pronunciation, reduce their accent, or sound more like a native speaker. But what does this actually mean to you? So as you'll learn in this workshop, there are 4 main components to your accent. There are more things you can do to become a better public speaker later, but we're going to focus on 4 main components. So I want you to think about what do you need to work on. And also, I didn't put this on the slide, but I want you to think about what do you need to work on, really emphasizing you and why. Why is this what's necessary? So let's talk about these 4 aspects of accent reduction. So number 1, we're going to look at the sounds of English. I'm not going to go into it today. This is not a full, let's reduce your accent in, 45 minutes lesson. But I just want you to understand what you're going to be focusing on with accent reduction. So we have the sounds of English, the pronunciation of vowels and consonants. So this is something that I really want you to think about, the sounds of English, the pronunciation of vowels and consonants. So the pronunciation of sounds is important. What I encourage you to do if you really feel like you need to work on certain sounds, and if you're from certain regions of the world, you do need to work on certain sounds because they may interfere with whether people understand you or not. So a lot of people struggle with the TH sound because it doesn't exist in other languages. And so they need to actually work on this particular pronunciation of the consonants. Or they need to work on certain vowel sounds. That was what I learned when I learned Spanish, is that I had to pronounce the vowels more like they were in Spanish, not so much. We have so many vowels in English, it's confusing. So that's when you're talking about the sounds of English, most people say pronunciation and they mean the sounds of English, the consonants, the vowels, troubleshooting different sounds. So what I encourage people to do if you're trying to improve this on your own is you need to kind of just go to Google and you need to search common pronunciation mistakes, Korean speakers, common pronunciation, I can't even pronounce pronunciation, common pronunciation mistakes, French speakers. Just type it into Google and you're going to find some suggestions on what are the common mistakes that people with your native language are making. And those are sounds that may lead to interference, right? The difference, sometimes they call them minimal pairs when you have like the B sound and the V sound. And as you notice, when I make those sounds, B is closed, V is the teeth, or the teeth on the lip. And that's different in different languages. If you're constantly pronouncing your consonants the way they are in your native language, you're probably going to have an accent because it's not going to sound the way that it should. And there's a lot of sounds that native speakers of English do in other languages. For example, one of the very first thing I I had to practice, but took me about 10 years to learn how to do it, was to roll my R's, because we don't have that sound in American English. We have the R sound, which is like we barely move our mouths for that sound. So I had to learn how to do it because my mouth wasn't used to making those shapes. But the sound that I really focused on when I lived in Argentina was the D sound. Because in English, we have this hard D, right? Like door, duh, duh. But in Argentine Spanish, it was like a softer, kind of like a TH sound. And then I moved to Peru and I learned that, they use the hard D there. So you really have to think about how are the sounds translating into English? A lot of times they're kind of approximate. L sound, because there's a couple of different sounds in different languages that are similar but not exactly. So you have to learn how to use your mouth in that way. And I think a lot of people get stuck in accent reduction because it can be really overwhelming to kind of diagnose yourself, figure out which sounds are hard for you, which sounds you're not doing accurately, and fix them, because it requires exercising your mouth. It's the same as, lifting weights or doing an exercise routine or anything like that. That is really, really challenging to get used to using your mouth in a different way. And times people do what I do. They find the ones that are the worst and they fix those. And that's fine. If that's helping you speak more clearly, that's what I would suggest you do. But don't get stopped on the pronunciation of the consonants and the vowels. Don't let that stop you. You really want to focus on other aspects of your accent in order to speak more clearly, to be more easily understood, and to sound more like an American. So next, I want to talk about the rhythm of English. So we talked about the sounds of English, and now we're talking about the rhythm of English. And if you've been around my corner of the internet, you know I am pretty much obsessed with word and sentence stress because, like I said, I'm an accent coach. I've worked with people from all kinds of different regions, and almost everybody struggles with the rhythm of English. So the rhythm of English is word and sentence stress. And it's kind of like if you think about the rhythm of English, you think about the ways our voices go up and down. So that's kind of the rhythm, right? Where you're listening to the music and you can kind of follow the rhythm of English. Not everyone is as musical as someone like me. I'm very expressive. Some people have more flat tones, but even men, like you'll notice their voices go up and down. You just have to listen for that rhythm. And the rhythm of English, word stress, sentence stress, this is what's going to help clarify your meaning. So when I help people with accent reduction, we usually start with word stress because this is what helps people understand you. Native English speakers are listening for this particular sound. They're listening for you to signal with your voice which words are important. And I notice a lot of times people who live in the US, they say, well, my friends don't correct my accent. Well, your friends probably don't know that they're doing this. I didn't know that I was doing that this is part of English until I'd been teaching English for like 5 years. It's not even something like I learned as I started to become a teacher. It's something I had to get special training in once I realized how much I loved doing this kind of thing. So I just want you to understand that it's sometimes hard for a native English speaker to realize what you're not doing if they're not a professional and they're not working on that themselves. So I'm telling you, listen to the rhythm of English. If you focus the majority of your attention on the rhythm, the ups and downs that you hear in the words, that is going to reduce, I would say, more than 50% of your accent. I think it's the most essential thing because you're signaling to the person which words they need to listen for. And there's a lot of aspects that go into this. You guys know there's tons of resources on my YouTube channel and on my website and in my free email course, which one of you mentioned you just signed up for, that get you started with this. It's something, once you have the awareness, that's going to help you move towards reducing your accent. So we'll talk about it when I answer some questions in a moment. Next, we're going to talk about the music of English, the intonation. So we talked about the rhythm, which is the ups and downs, and now we're talking a little bit about the music of English, your intonation. Now, a lot of people struggle with intonation because they're not aware it exists, right? It's not something you think about actively in most of the cases. And it has taken me 15 years of speaking Spanish to realize that the reason my Spanish isn't so good is because my English intonation is like dominating my Spanish. Because we signal what we mean, how we feel through the tone of our voice. You can tell when I get all serious because my tone gets lower, I drop down, and you can tell when I'm in a good mood because I'm really happy and I jump all around. And I mean, physically, you can also see that too. But you can tell when someone's annoyed by listening to the tone of their voice. You can tell if someone's happy by listening to the tone of their voice. And it can completely change the literal meaning of the sentence with your tone. I've got a bunch of videos on intonation on my YouTube channel and on my website, so you can check that out. I'm not going to go into this whole explanation, but I just want you to understand that the music of English, you need the rhythm of English to get to the music of English and to use it as fully and effectively as you want to. So let's talk about number 4, which is the flow of English. So this is what I was trying to find a good word to express this, but I called it the flow because this is part of the rhythm and music of English together. And this is what we call phrasing, linking, and connected speech. And there's other elements that are involved like pacing and other things. So the flow of English is, if you notice, especially when I do a live video, sometimes you notice the breathing, right? Because we pause between word groups or thought groups. We pause or rhythm groups. There's lots of terms that you could use to describe it. We pause in between ideas. We pause at the end of the sentence. And this is kind of giving the listener a chance to know where we are in our thoughts, whether they can respond, whether they can interrupt, and that kind of thing. Then we also have linking and connected speech. And a perfect example of, linking and connected speech are just two terms that pretty much describe the same thing. Contractions. I often remind people, please use contractions. It sounds unnatural if you don't use contractions. Like people say cannot instead of can't. You want to say can't, but because native speakers say can't. And so you want to say can't because we are simplifying and reducing these words together. The unimportant words get smushed together so that we can focus our attention on the important words. And this is why, I wish I had an example ready right now, but this is why certain words all seem to link together. They seem to be all connected together. Another common example is going to, right? Instead of saying, I'm going to tell you about this in a moment, we usually say, I'm gonna. And that's an example of linking and connected speech. It's when all the words connect together in order to just make it easier to flow to the words that matter. And that's where I always use my hands, right? We're showing you the rhythm of English, the flow of English, the music of English. So that's where the connected speech helps make that flow, helps us connect between those two sounds. So the problem is that, and this is just me being real because this is my YouTube channel, so many people try to skip all the way to the flow of English and they start using gonna and they start using wanna and they start using dunno or they start using things like that, either in typing or in speech. But if you're not producing the rhythm of English or the music of English and you jump all the way to using gonna, it doesn't sound natural. It sounds like you're trying to fake something that's not coming naturally to you, because these reductions happen once you have a sense of the rhythm and music of English. Then you can start reducing sounds. So a lot of people skip to the end because everybody's like, oh, gonna, wanna, it's so fun, I can include it in my speech. But if you're not stressing words correctly, you're not creating that rhythm of English, you're kind of jumping to the end, and it's gonna be really hard for people to understand you because you're reducing things without stressing the word gonna. We have to stress the beginning of that word because it's going, right? Gonna, and then it's drawing the native speaker's attention to what's important in your sentence. So a lot of people jump to the end, and that's why using gonna, wanna, dunno, all of these different all these different reductions, I just said it right there. You have to understand the rhythm before you can get all the way to the end and then be in the flow of English. And it comes more naturally once you get used to which words are stressed and which words are reduced, or which syllables are stressed and which are reduced. What I really, 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 really want you to understand is that your mindset matters. The thing that happens for many non-native speakers is that we get in the mindset that my accent's never going to improve. I'm never going to be able to do this. I'm just always going to have an accent. And I'm speaking honestly because that's how I feel in Spanish a lot of the times. So it's hard when you have people have that reaction, or you're just so used to hearing yourself have an accent. It's hard for you to imagine that it's possible to reduce your accent. But it absolutely is possible. I feel like I finally understand why I have an accent in Spanish. And so that next time I live in South America, if I live in Latin America, I live in Spanish speaking country, I'm going to work on my accent. I'm going to find somebody to help me because I know what I'm doing wrong now. And I know it's possible. I just didn't have the skills yet. So I want you guys to understand that your mindset totally matters. If you feel like it's not possible for you, it's not going to be possible for you. If you feel like you can do it, you just didn't have the skills or the knowledge or the resources yet, it's going to be possible for you. You just have to think, I didn't know this yet. So I have to learn it. And once I learn it, I will make progress. And once I commit to making progress, I will continue to make progress, right? So it really is possible. It does take work, and that's why it is about your mindset. You have to commit to doing the work. You have to commit to believing that you're going to do the work to reduce your accent and you're going to see results. And I've seen this happen again and again, that people come in kind of discouraged, like, I've done everything to reduce my accent. I've bought every book. I've watched every YouTube video. Why is it not happening? And it's like, you just didn't have the right things you needed to move you forward yet. So mindset matters. You can reduce your accent. It is possible. And it's if you want to. You may not want to reduce your accent, and that's totally fine too. Okay, so let's talk next. So let's talk about where most people get stuck during the accent reduction process, because most people do get stuck in the accent reduction process, and I've kind of given you a couple of clues already. So what happens is that most people are generally aware of what they need to do in order to reduce their accent. If you've taken my free email course, or you've watched any of my accent reduction videos, or any of anybody's accent reduction videos, and you're probably somewhere between this awareness place and the action, right? You're taking action, you're moving towards having a better accent. Awareness, action, accent. It's hard to say those words after each other. So what happens is most people get stopped somewhere between awareness and action because they're taking small steps, not over a short period of time. Like they're watching a video once, they're practicing it a couple of times, and then they're forgetting about it for like a month. Consistent action over a long period of time, consistent action over a short period of time and consistent awareness will lead to a better accent, will lead to a more American accent. It doesn't have to be forever. And that goes back to the mindset piece, is that a lot of people feel like, oh my gosh, it's going to take me so long. And it really doesn't. I feel like most people get pretty noticeable results within a few months, like 2, 3, 4 months, depending on how much action they're taking. So this is where a lot of people get stopped with accent reduction. So I noticed with my clients that, because pretty much you follow the same process with everybody once you kind of have your process and you know what works. And I've noticed the people who practice at home, they do the work, they take the action every day, they really, really, really emphasize trying to improve their accent, they have a better accent. The people who show up to meet with me on one-on-one sessions or whatever it is that people do to reduce their accent, but they don't do the work outside of these meetings or outside of this particular classroom, whatever the situation is where you're trying to work on your accent, if you only meet with somebody once a week and you don't do any work in between meetings, you're going to have a deeper awareness, a deeper understanding of what you need to do, but you're not going to be doing it. And the doing it is what's going to lead you to the better accent. This is my same problem with speaking Spanish, with having an accent in Spanish, is I have some awareness of things I need to do, but I don't practice consistently. If I did, I would have a better accent, right? I don't work on reducing my accent consistently. So I'm speaking, I get it. I'm there with you guys. And it really does require you to put your focus on this being a primary focus for whatever period of your life that you want to improve your accent. So that's just something to really keep in mind as you work on reducing your accent, is that you need to do something, right? And so I want to show you guys, this is my opinion as well, what accent coaches want you to know. It's like, I want to do like a true confessions of like online English teachers or accent coaches or whatever in the future. But this is what I want you to know. So real talk. Reducing your accent is not impossible. We have seen it time and again with our clients and students. Like, people get results. It's totally possible. But just living in a native speaking country is not enough. I know this from years of living in Spanish speaking countries and sounding as American as ever, right? A lot of people say, well, when I move to the US or I don't have the opportunity, I can't reduce my accent. That does not matter. You can spend years living in the US and almost never speak English. It just depends on where your attention goes in your life. So it doesn't matter whether you live in a native speaking country or not to reduce your accent. It's what you do with your mouth that really counts. So what we really want you to do is take action towards your goals. And even if accent reduction is not your goal, take action towards your goals, please. You may know what you need to do, but you need to follow a process or a system and make it part of your daily life. So that's kind of what you need to reduce your accent, because reducing your accent's about learning how to move your mouth differently in a way that isn't like your native language, because your mouth does that without you thinking about it. I saw a quote that I couldn't find when I was making the presentation, but I saw a quote where they said, oh yeah, I can do an American accent, but my mouth is really tired afterwards. And I saw a video of a YouTuber, like a Russian woman living in the US, where she said the same thing. She's like, Americans are so exaggerated. So when you speak, you need to be exaggerated too. And I think British people say that about Americans. Like, I think it was a British actor saying this about Americans and how they sound. So I just want you to understand that it requires exercise. It requires you to stretch and move your mouth in ways you may not be used to. And that's okay. It's possible. You just need to get used to moving your mouth. And that's why I'm always like, this with your mouth and moving your tone. You're stretching your vocal cords. You're stretching your pitch like you were a singer. It's actually singing and drama exercises help you reduce your accent. And we'll answer that in the questions. But just know it takes practice, but it is possible and it is worth it if reducing your accent is what's important to you. All right, so I hope that this video has been helpful for you. If you're not already a member and you want to get my free email course where I talk about my top 5 tips to sound more natural, it is at soundmorenatural.com, completely free. And then once that course finishes, you get other resources through email that are already available on my website, but basically tell you how to kind of learn it and structure it in a good way. Most people seem pretty happy being in part of the email community, so I do encourage you to sign up if you would like to get my emails and join and get that information directly to your inbox, which is so much more convenient. Okay, guys, you understand that if you focus on what you need and what you need for your particular life, that's going to keep you from getting distracted about reducing your accent. It's really focus on what matters. And for me, I think if you focus the majority of your attention on word stress, sentence stress, and intonation, you're going to sound so much more like a native speaker and be more easily understood, which is the whole point anyway, because everyone has an accent. Accents are normal. You just want to make sure that you speak clearly so that people understand you so you don't feel frustrated when you're speaking. Okay, thanks guys. So once again, I'm Kim from EnglishWithKim.com. I'm your guide to the essential conversation skills you need to sound more natural in English. If you like this video, I would appreciate a thumbs up, and I will talk to you again soon. Have a good one. Goodbye.